Hi everyone, I'm Fernanda, and today I am doing a video I have been wanting to do forever, which is explaining my OC's lore. I am so excited for this, but I do want to mention that my story is still a work in progress, not everything is set in stone, and some things may change later on. But I'm happy with what I have so far, and I need to get it out of my chest and just yap about them. So let's get started! So, my story starts off with Damian. He just moved into a new town with his mom to start living with her new partner, which meant that Damian also now had a stepsister called Nadine. They're both the same age, but things are still pretty awkward between them, and if that wasn't hard enough, he's also the new kid at school during his senior year. But he actually wasn't that upset about it. Back at his old school, Damian was sort of an outcast. Many people thought he was weird because of things he used to say as a kid. He used to talk about how he could see ghosts. Back then, many people chalked it up to him just being a kid and having a wild imagination, but even as he grew older, he continued to say that he could actually see them and that it wasn't his imagination. But eventually, he learned that being able to see ghosts wasn't something normal, and it wasn't even something to be happy about. People started looking at him weird, and even his own mom asked him to knock it off because it was starting to freak her out. Because of that, Damian decided to lie to her and told her that he couldn't see them anymore and that it must have just been a phase he was going through. He would still communicate with the ghosts secretly though. The ghosts felt like the friends he never had, so he enjoyed talking to them. He learned that once someone became a ghost, they would lose the memories of their past life. Most were okay with that and just spent their time roaming around, but there were times where he'd encounter a ghost that wanted to know about their past life. And they would beg Damian to help them since he was the only one who could see and talk to them. Some would even get desperate and try anything to get him to help them. But Damian was just a kid back then, so when he'd tell them that he didn't know how to help, they'd get upset and angry at him. Because of that, Damian stopped talking to all ghosts. And so now that Damian's at a new school, he decided to try to start over and now presents himself as confident and sure of himself. He immediately befriends the popular group of kids. They're not the nicest, and Damian doesn't always agree with their actions, but in his mind, it's better to join them than to be bullied by them. And so now he tries his best to act normal. And that's it for Damian. Next, we have Nova. So, Nova is also in his senior year at the same school that Damian's now attending. He becomes intrigued by hearing that they're gonna be getting a new student. He's not jumping at the opportunity to be his friend, but he's still curious to see who the new kid is. Things change, however, when he sees that Damian started hanging out with the same group of kids that pick on Nova and his friends. And so all the interest immediately went away and it gave him a bad impression of him. Nova isn't the most liked kid at school. He has a small group of friends, but other than them, other people consider him, well, a loser. He's awkward, sarcastic, and doesn't try to suck up to the popular kids unlike everyone else. Not to mention that his name and appearance are easy targets for him to be picked on. He used to pick fights with the kids that teased him. He wouldn't always win, but at least he tried. He eventually stopped though since his twin sister Melanie was trying to fit into that group, and so she asked him if he could stop and try to get along with them. He had no intention of doing so, but he wanted to make his sister happy, and so he stopped and tried to lay low. And also, just like Damian, Nova was also born with an unusual ability. The ability to copy anyone's appearance and the ability to copy anyone else's appearance by touching them. I don't really know if it makes sense. Nova's ability is always one I struggled with, but basically he doesn't need to touch anyone physically to copy their appearance, but he does need to touch them in order to copy their ability, which only lasts about 5 minutes before he starts getting a headache. Nova actually really likes his ability and likes using it as much as he can, but is careful not to be seen by anyone other than his family, who are the only people that know about it. Which includes his sister Melanie, that unlike Nova wishes more than anything in the world to not have been born with an ability. All Melanie wants is to have a normal life like all the other girls in her grade. She was born with the ability to control and manipulate her hair, and you might be thinking, well, all she has to do is not use her ability, and you'd be right, but her ability is actually controlled by her emotions. And it doesn't help that Melanie, as much as she tries to present herself as confident and perfect, actually has a very short temper and just like Nova can be very sarcastic and a bit of a nerd sometimes. And so because of that, Melanie has to try to keep her emotions in check all the time, which she hates. And like I mentioned before, Melanie was the one who asked Nova to stop getting into fights, and that's because there's been a bunch of pranks going around where kids would report other kids to the authorities saying that they have unnatural abilities. Even if the person didn't have one, it would still cause an investigation, and so Melanie did not want that to happen to Nova. Obviously, once the prank started happening, the authorities announced that if they continued receiving false reports, that the person who made it would get into trouble. That doesn't completely get rid of Melanie's nerves though, and so she wants Nova to try to get on their good side. Melanie doesn't tell him that though. She doesn't want to scare him and make him feel like a freak, so instead she tells him that he needs to stop because now that she's finally gotten herself into the popular group, she can't have him picking fights with a lot of the guys her friends now hang out with. She feels bad about it, but in her mind, she's just doing what's best for him. And it's not like she's just allowing the other guys to pick on him. Now that she's part of the cool kids, Melanie has more influence and tries her best to get them to stop picking on him. Some do and some don't, but she's trying her best. And that's all the characters I'm going to be talking about for now, but there's still more, so don't click off yet. I thought that it'd be fun to tell you guys a bit of how the plot's gonna start. So Damian has been in his new school for about a week or so, but just as he's starting to get used to his new life, he comes across a ghost of someone he actually recognizes. Someone he had just met not too long ago. It was his classmate and the most popular girl in school, Daphne Price. That couldn't be possible though, he had just seen her a few days ago. I mean, sure she hadn't been in school lately, but people just said that she was skipping for attention. He can't help but become startled and finds himself staring directly at the ghost of his classmate, which gets her attention, and so she approaches him asking if he can see her. That snaps him back into reality, and although he tries to ignore her, it's too late for that. She knows that he can see her and is trying anything to get him to talk to her. He eventually caves in and goes to a quiet area where he makes sure that no one else would be able to hear him. He tells her to leave him alone, but Damian's the only living person to be able to see her, so of course she's not gonna listen to him. She wants to know what happened to her and asks Damian for help. He denies, but she tells him that she won't leave him alone until he helps her. He feels bad about it, of course, and tells her that he really doesn't know anything. But he does know how to get a ghost to move on from this life. And that's because he's seen it happen before. He doesn't know exactly what happens after a ghost moves on, whether it's going to heaven or being reincarnated, but he knows it's better than just roaming around here for eternity. And so he tells her that in order for her to move on, she has to fulfill her biggest desire. But the problem is that ghosts have no memory of their past life, so she doesn't know what that is. Damian has no idea where to start, but he knows that he has to try to get it done before he graduates in a year, or else he'll never see her again, since ghosts are tied to the area they died in. And so now Damian's fresh start isn't looking too peaceful anymore. He has to help his dead classmate move on, and he might even have to ask for help from the only other kid who can copy his ability to see ghosts and his sister who was friends with Daphne before she died. And then maybe him and Nova fall in love. Who said that? Anyways, that's it for now. I'm planning on doing a part 2 to talk about my other characters like Nadine, Jackson, and of course Daphne. But that'll be for another time because I already feel like I've been yapping for way too long and I really don't want to bombard you guys with a ton of information. So I'll save that for another time. I really appreciate you guys for listening and hope you guys like the story I have for them so far. These guys have literally taken over my life, so I hope you can grow to love them too. Thank you guys so much for watching and I hope you all have a great day.